This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Queenpin 2.0, Part 2. When we left off, the Queen Mother had just found out exactly how her sister Jira got away from the Baptiste family's men 6 months earlier. She got Stephanie and Donovan all the way together and offered her services to the families in exchange for keeping her sons out of the life. Apparently, the new kids on the block, Donovan, Selima, Stephanie, Tru, and Rennie, had been wreaking havoc and causing all kinds of mayhem. After she sent Donovan and Stephanie back to Dallas, the Queen Mother said, "So why is this the first time that I'm hearing that Jira is in the hands of the Morena family?" The Morena family was a family out of Colombia who were about the same size and with the same amount of power as the Lopez family. They'd been vying for the 5th spot in the 5 families for several years. And apparently, they'd been keeping an eye on that little situation with the Ramirez family in the Dominican Republic. They saw the writing on the wall and figured this was as good a time as any to make a move that they believed would cement their spot. So they inserted themselves in the drama. Samuel said, "Because we only found out like a week or 2 ago." The Queen Mother said, "How is that even possible?" Samuel said, "When Jira went missing at the hospital, we figured she'd had some help. Maybe she was in league with somebody other than the Ramirez family. But we didn't think she'd been kidnapped. All we cared about was that she didn't know where you were. And with all that was going on with Anders, you had a lot on your plate. At the time, we had a team in the DR finishing up the assignment there, and another team scouring Trinidad looking for Jira. When we got the info that a private plane had landed on the island, we didn't know whose it was, but we figured she was on it. I was turning over every rock, trying to figure out how she arranged it. She hadn't received the payout from JR, but that didn't mean she didn't have something else in the works, and that was the priority. So a week later, when she called Selima and claimed that she'd been kidnapped, and she told the kidnappers that she'd been excommunicated from the family, but they didn't believe her, that they thought that the men who were following her on the island were somehow connected to JR and his shenanigans, and told her all about JR's plans to eliminate her, so they extracted her from the hospital to keep her safe. Selima called me. Then Selima, picking up the story, said, "I was on vacation. So when my personal phone rang and it was on Jira, I was shocked. I listened to her. And then I called Marley, include him in. And then Marley picked up the conversation and said, Selima ran it all down. I was skeptical. It sounded like a trap to me. I figured it was Jira's plan B." Samuel said, "We put a trace on the call and got nothing. So I called Selima in. We ran down every crew that was in league with or enemies of the Ramirez family to see if they knew anything, and got nothing. They didn't call back for another week. And when they did, Marley got on the phone. Then Marley said, and I've been handling negotiations ever since." The Queen Mother asked, "And this has been going on for months. Why?" Marley said, "They believed that Jira was trying to cover for the family by saying that she was disconnected from the organization. I played on that. And once we knew that they were just using her as a negotiation tool, getting her back wasn't a priority." The Queen Mother said, "So how did the negotiations fall apart?" Samuel said, "Because they refused to work with me." Then Samuel, shamefully, told the Queen Mother that when they finally found out that it was the Moreno family, and they realized that he was the head of the Baptiste family, and that he was the one who'd run off with their work over 40 years before, they demanded that somebody else take the helm, or that he arrange with one of the other families to handle negotiations on his behalf and cut the Baptiste family completely out of the deal. The Queen Mother said, "And let me guess, they wanted to be the main supplier." Samuel said, "Yep." And Selima wasn't ready, and the Queen Mother cut him off and said, "So you brought my son in? What exactly was Donovan supposed to do?" Nigel said, "No, wait a minute. First, we tried to negotiate with them and work something out." And then Manny cut in and said, "And I wasn't willing to cut out my brother-in-law or lie to them and say that I was." And Nigel continued saying, "At that same time, Donovan had come to me about replacing me as the head of the St. James family." The Queen Mother said, "Oh, dear God." Nigel said, "I knew what was going on with this whole situation with the Morenos. And after Donovan told me everything that went down when he got home, I brought it to the table. And we all figured." Manny cut in again and said, I figured it was best to keep him away from my daughter. And Samuel said, so we all agreed that it was best that we keep that man busy, so we didn't have to have a repeat of you and Jira. And Nigel finished by saying, between him and Q. 6 months earlier, when the 5-woman team set up the remaining members of the Ramirez family in the Dominican Republic, and JR and his remaining generals were captured, Donovan headed home. When Donovan walked into the estate, it was empty. Not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. He went all over the estate, at least all over the places where he expected his children to be. Finding nobody, he was immediately concerned. The man was already in a manic state. So when he called the Queen Mother, he was on 10. When she answered, she said, son, where are you? And when he said that he was at the estate, she told him to immediately get to Baylor and told him what floor they were on and which family waiting room they were in. Baylor, Scott, and White Heart and Vascular Hospital is known to be the best hospital for heart attacks in Dallas. Initially, LJ had taken Pops Andy to White Rock Medical Center because it was close to White Rock Lake Park. But as soon as doctors assessed and mostly stabilized Pops Andy, they medevaced him to Baylor because he was in critical condition. So when the Queen Mother told him to go to Baylor, Donovan said, what the hell going on? Did Angela have the babies and something wrong with one of their hearts or something? The Queen Mother said, no, please, just get here and I'll explain when you get here, son. When Donovan got to Baylor, the whole family and all of their extended family was waiting in the family waiting room. And Donovan was 7:30 hot when he found out that his father had had a heart attack and nobody had bothered to call him. He assumed that nobody called his uncles and told them either. He said, I could have been here hours ago if I knew. The Queen Mother said, Donovan, you flew to the DR. You had to fly back. Do you really think that it would have been a good idea for someone to tell you this kind of news, knowing you had to fly a plane for 4+ hours? Donovan said, y'all always got an excuse for why you had to leave me out and withhold information from me. But I bet if it was Q cut him off and said, cut that out, man. When Angela was in preterm labor, who called me in the DR and told me? When Donovan said nothing, Q said, exactly. I found out when we landed in Dallas. Everything is not a personal attack against you. Then the Queen Mother said, right now we need to be in prayer. Your father is in open heart surgery. When Donovan insisted that they all tell him everything that happened leading up to his father's heart attack, he just got angrier and even more emotionally unstable. He said, so you mean to tell me Pops ain't getting no credit for being faithful to you for all them years? Damn, a nigga can't make a mistake. The Queen Mother said, boy, watch your mouth. Who do you think you talking to? Fidelity doesn't get you extra credit points on the test called marriage. It should be a given. It's a requirement and expectation. And that's besides the point. Donovan said, no, it's not. I'm sure if you wasn't putting him through all of that and giving him all that grief, he wouldn't have had a heart attack. The Queen Mother said, oh, so you blaming me? Q said, come on, D, that's enough. But Donovan was on a roll. He said, and then Salima telling Anjira all the business? Q said, Salima had no idea, just like the rest of us, why Anjira was estranged from the family. And nothing she told her led her to the... Donovan kept right on going. He said, what she told her led her to Vibrantly You. And that stupid IG page where y'all posted those clips from that wedding led her to Bernie. And then Bernie opened her big mouth during their little powwow. And she had all the details she needed to find the Queen Mother. The Queen Mother said, we've all deduced that, Donovan. What's your point? Donovan said, oh, my point is, if he would have left her behind in Denver, none of this would be happening right now. It's bad enough she knew where my kids were the whole time, but she brought that damn company and that bulldagger here, and now Pops is fighting for his life. Shocked, Angela said, what? Donovan, this is not the time or the place. Donovan said, shut up talking to me. You said you better watch your mouth. Donovan said, where my damn kids at? The Queen Mother said, Donovan, all of the kids are at your house with Joyce and Bernie. And Donovan lost it. Donovan said, you left the kids with her? If y'all stupid enough to leave y'all kids with her, that's on y'all. Well, why in the hell would y'all leave my kids with her? The Queen Mother said, Donovan Anthony St. James, lower your voice. This is a hospital. Pull yourself together. The kids are fine. They're at your house where they need to be while we focus on supporting your father. Donovan said, nah, I'm going back to the estate and I'm getting the rest of their stuff and all of mine and going back to my house and putting Bernie out. Then he headed towards the door. When the Queen Mother tried to stop him, Q said, my dear, just let him go. Ain't no talking sense into him right now. Overhearing that, Donovan turned back around and said, I saw your car at the estate, so I know your wife ain't tell you that she knew all along Veronica was going to take my kids and dip, and she knew where they were. If it's family over everything, then you should be going with me to the estate to get your stuff too. Then he turned around and started walking towards the door, and Q started walking behind him. But he looked at Angela and said, I'll be right back. LJ put his arms around Regina and Angela because he was sitting between the two of them, and Angela just cried. Regina said, that man need to get back on his medication or on that herbal regimen Maribel had him on or something. Because if not, he gonna turn this whole family upside down. And what the hell was he talking about, Angie? Angela said, I did not know what Veronica was gonna do. And in unison, everybody in the room started saying stuff like, we know that. Of course you didn't. Girl, he tripping. Angela told them about the letter that Donovan wrote her and about her conversation with Q. She said, so he knows exactly what I knew and when I knew it and why I did everything that I could to direct him and Donovan to the same information independent of me. Q told me that he understood, and we both knew that Donovan wouldn't. Tearfully, she said, I should have been prepared for this, though. I figured that at a time like this, he would at least exert some self-control. The Queen Mother said, all right now, Angela, don't you go getting all worked up. We need those babies to stay inside for as long as possible. As soon as Maribel gets back here, we're going to have her check you out. And if anything doesn't seem right, you going back to that estate. Corey had left his newborn daughter that he and Stephanie had named Indira Kari. Everyone had been calling Kari with Maribel at the estate while he was at the hospital praying over Andy and with the family. He'd only left about an hour or so ago, so they were expecting Maribel to come back at any moment. The Queen Mother continued saying, unless Veronica told you that she was going to kidnap those children and where she was taking them, there isn't a thing she could have told you that would have changed how all of this turned out. Angela said, no, she didn't. She told me about her life, and intermingled in that were details that could have pointed to the DR. But they were some of the same things that she told Donovan. So Queen Mother cut off and said, then you did what you were supposed to do. Hell, Donovan should have known when you kept Amora's secrets when she was hiding Michael from Q and not sure who the daddy was. If you didn't tell her business, why would you have told Veronica's? Then they heard a commotion in the hall. When LJ jumped up and ran out to see what was going on, Q and Donovan was throwing bows. Maribel had arrived and was trying to break it up. The nurses were calling security. And when LJ finally got Donovan and Q apart and was pushing Donovan down the hall, Donovan yelled out, you always choosing somebody else's side over mine. To hell with all of y'all. Then he looked at Maribel and said, and since you defending your conniving cousin, to hell with you too. And when I come back with my kids, you better not be here. Then he stormed off. Q turned to LJ and said, bro, can you go with him, please? And make sure that he gets everything he owns out of the estate. And when he goes back to his house, he doesn't start any mess with Bernie. LJ said, nah, bro, you're going to have to get somebody else to do it because I'm not leaving until I know what's up with your pops. So Q called Big Wood. And when he answered, Q said, Wood, I need you. Where you at, yo? Woody said, what the hell going on, bro? Why I said that meeting was a success. When Q told Woody what was going on, Woody said, damn, bro, I'm in Denver, but I'm going to be on the first thing smoking. Q said, nah, stay where you at. I'll keep you posted, though. Woody said, now you acting like Donovan. First you need me, now you want me to stay? What the hell? Q chuckled and said, nah, bro, I thought you came back on the plane with Donovan and you was in Dallas. If I would have known you were on vacation, I wouldn't have even called you until I had more information on my pops. I'll keep you posted, though. You good. When the two hung up, Woody rolled over and looked at Tru and said,
we got to head back together.